Special effects are as important to modern movie making as the actors these days. More than half of the blockbusters we see are filmed on a green screen. Nothing is real. With so much movie budgets invested in special effects, how is it possible some movies' effects are pure cringe? It happens, and it's awful. So let's take a look at some special effects that don't have an excuse for being so terrible. The Mummy Returns 2001. The special effects in The Mummy Returns are legendary for being astonishingly horrible. Even little kids ask their parents what was wrong. Some fans probably wrote letters of complaint. This was pre-Twitter, so people had to work a little harder to air their grievances. But ultimately, there's no good excuse. The most cringe scene is during a fight between Brendan Fraser, he's back, did you hear? Leave a comment below, and Dwayne Johnson. Though, back when this movie was made, he was most notably called The Rock. In The Mummy Returns, Dwayne Johnson plays the Scorpion King. They made a horrible movie about him. Anyway, Brendan Fraser and the Scorpion King are fighting. Dwayne Johnson's face is mapped onto a scorpion somehow, and it is worse than the worst Halloween costume. He looks like some kind of melted walrus crustacean. If you pause it, you'll be so confused you'll forget what reality is. His face looks like a cheap mask knockoff you'd buy in Spencer's, and even though the CGI body looks a little better, it still pops out of the scene like a flamingo in an all-gray room. Of course, the movie still made an absurd amount of money, but with a budget of merely $100 million, you would think they could have done a better job at making the villain more believable. It's The Rock, people. RoboCop. 1987. This one is tough because RoboCop is awesome. Anyone in the know will tell you RoboCop was one of the best movies made in 1987 and still one of the best action movies in the history of cinema. It is on a lot of movie lovers' top 10 lists. The movie is a well-crafted, smart, super violent, no kids please, gore fest of over-the-top action. It was the perfect satire of our indoctrinated, materialistic time period. The movie won an Oscar for Best Sound Editing. RoboCop was made for a modest budget of $13 million, which shows how committed they were because mostly the effects were pretty good. Keep in mind, this was back in the day before computers did everything. The special effects were stop motion, think of A Nightmare Before Christmas, but we're here to discuss awful special effects, so you know what's coming. The infamous scene involves a bad guy, a corporate goon named Dick Jones, awesome 80s villain name, falling from a skyscraper window. They shot the scene using a dummy. Needless to say, it didn't look good. In fact, it looked really bad. Go watch it for yourself and have a good laugh, and enjoy RoboCop in all of its glory while you're at it. Freddy vs. Jason 2003. Fans of Nightmare on Elm Street and fans of Friday the 13th have longed for a crossover between the two legendary icons of horror. Even back in 1987, Paramount Studios tried to bring them together, but the two sides couldn't come to an agreement, so the project was axed. 15 years were spent trying to get a deal done and $6 million on 18 unused screenplays. That is wild. You'd think at some point they'd just do it to stop needlessly spending money. Finally, in 2003, horror fans got their wish. New Line Cinema released Freddy vs. Jason. As you might expect, waiting so long in anticipation will often leave you disappointed. And that's exactly what happened with Freddy vs. Jason. Audiences were let down by the imbecilic plot of the film, and the special effects left much to be desired. Both Freddy and Jason came to be in the era of practical effects made in real life with stuff you could see and hold. CGI was the new kid in town, and it didn't live up to the hype for this one. Freddy is all about luring young fools into a dream state and then killing them. That's his thing. During all of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, he is constantly coming up with creative ways to do just that. Sure, there are some silly ones that maybe didn't blow us away, but the pothead caterpillar in Freddy vs. Jason takes the cake for idiocy. The character who is to be Freddy's victim is a stoner. Shocking, right? This is so dumb, bear with me. So Freddy turns into a caterpillar with a bong. It's not scary, it's just there are no words. Just watch or don't. It is one of the dumbest CGI creations ever to graze the silver screen. $6 million and 18 scripts later, good grief. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, 2008. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a big success. It made almost $900 million at the box office. It was the highest-grossing film of all indie adventures. However, that didn't keep the movie safe from bad CGI. Steven Spielberg said he was excited to only use CGI when totally necessary. He wanted to stay true to the vibe of the original trilogy, but of course they used a ton of CGI because it ended ended up being easier. In the end, there were 450 CGI shots in the final theatrical release, so about 30% of the movie was computer-generated scenes. The scene in question involves some Soviet baddies being eaten alive by a swarm of deadly red ants. Yeah, let's just say fans and non-fans alike were bitterly disappointed. We're going to stick with Harrison Ford for one more. We're not blaming him, he just happens to be the lead in this one too. Air Force One. Before you ask, no, we're not talking about the shoes. This movie was super popular in the 90s, even President Bill Clinton enjoyed it. However, he did say that the real Air Force One does not have an escape pod or a rear parachute ramp, but that's okay, artists are allowed a creative license. Whether the sitting president liked the movie or not, no one could be thrilled about the crash scene at the end of the film. More proof that a big budget and big name actor to play the lead does not always pan out to great special effects. The plane hits the water and bounces a couple of times, ignoring the physics of gravity. Then it takes a nosedive worthy of a spit take and breaks in half. Some have compared the visuals and effects to a cheap video game rather than a movie with a budget of $85 million. Deep Blue Sea, 1997. Deep Blue Sea is somewhat of a cult classic. It was inspired by Australian screenwriter Duncan Kennedy's first-hand encounter with a shark attack victim. He said it gave him nightmares, which apparently eventually led to the script for the movie. The movie takes on a different tone than just pure terror. It is pretty funny and campy, with some great dialogue that is just pure cheese. Samuel L. Jackson's death is one of the most hilarious and shocking in recent memory. It's perfect. Wait, did I say perfect? It is something, all right. One second, Jackson is delivering an impassioned speech, and the next, he's being wolfed down by a giant killer shark. The GCI shark is not so convincing. One second, it is grabbing Mr. Jackson, and the next, it appears to be chewing on a mannequin. Hello, Marvel. We knew we would see you eventually. Blade 2, 2002. Before Marvel went all in, one of their mainstays was Blade. Blade 2 was the most financially successful of the three films, making $80 million in the United States and over $150 million worldwide. Not bad at all, but again, what you earn does not always mirror what you deliver. There are some possible excuses. Maybe director Guillermo del Toro said he wanted the action to seem like a mix of comic books and anime. This might explain why in several fight scenes, Wesley Snipes, who portrays Blade, looks to be a character out of a video game. There are close-ups on Blade where it's obvious the face is computer-generated and cuts to a wider shot where it appears he has no joints. It is weird, but if that is the way they wanted it, who are we to judge? Oh yeah, we are the audience and we are allowed to have our opinions. It looks ridiculous. We are getting close to the end, gang, and it seems fitting that our list closes out on more comic book movies. Here we go with Catwoman. Catwoman 2002. Same year as Blade 2. First off, we should come out and say it. Catwoman is arguably the worst movie ever made. No joke, I'd tell you to go watch it for yourself, but I like you. The plot is terrible, the screenplay is awful, the acting is bad, and oh yeah, the special effects are so horrible they verge on offensive. It cost $100 million to make the movie, and it only earned $90 million back. The studio lost money. Boo-hoo. Halle Berry is the star, but the problem with Catwoman is that almost all the scenes involving her as Catwoman in her suit are computer-generated. She moved like some kind of puppet, and what makes it worse is that they really go all in on CGI in this movie. Aside from Catwoman looking absurd, there are tons of other needlessly CGI scenes, including shots of the city, spiders, and a bunch of cats. You really have to CGI a cat, and there's even a seagull attack. Don't ask. Green Lantern 2011. What made the release of Green Lantern all that much more brutal is that it went up against the might of what Marvel was bringing to the table. Marvel was onto something, and DC was making Green Lantern. The CG is considered by many to be the worst and most disappointing in recent memory. The decision to make Hal Jordan's suit all CGI was a bad one. He looks like a raver at a psycho clown discotheque. The way the light pulses on the suit is just odd. You want your superheroes to look powerful and in control. Green Lantern just looked like an idiot. And yikes, there are like 50 other Green Lantern-looking maniacs in this movie, each looking worse than the previous one. Well guys, that is our list of horrible special effects. Sadly, the list could go on for weeks. Maybe we'll come back and do another. Hey, leave a comment below and let us know a movie you think is cringeworthy of being mentioned. We'll be back with more videos to entertain you. In the meantime, hit the like and subscribe buttons and we'll see you soon.